Hello, welcome to The Legal File. My name is Charles Parselle. I'm really pleased to welcome today as my guest attorney Julia Swanson. Hello, Julia.
Hello, and thank you so much. I'm delighted to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you on the show. First of all, let me ask you, who are you?
Gosh, who am I? Well, as you know, I'm Julia Swanson, but that doesn't really begin to tell the story.
Correct.
I'm an attorney. I'm from a similar part of the world as you, as everybody by now knows, meaning England. So do you want to know how I came to America?
I would love to know how you came to America, and I think it's very interesting to find out, have you always been an attorney, or did you come to that? So how did you come to America?
Okay. Growing up, I was always fascinated with the look of America, as many Europeans are, and it always looked so exciting. But I never imagined that I would actually leave and come here, but I wanted to have a look. So on my last long vacation after college, you graduate and you're 22, and you never think you'll have the 6 weeks off that you ever need again. So that was the plan, come to New York, take a look, and go back. And I had a job with BP at the time.
And can I ask, was that, your degree was in law, was it?
No. My degree was in sociology.
So you graduated with a sociology degree from an English university?
That's right, up in Birmingham. And my grandfather had been a lawyer, but nobody in my family ever encouraged me. Well, in those days, they didn't really encourage girls to do anything other than be secretaries anyway. So I was never pushed towards this kind of a career. But I did want to see New York. So I came, and I'll never forget, circling over the top in the plane in JFK Airport and looking down and saying, oh my God, this is incredible. I didn't know life could be this way. It's so, everybody knows where they're going and what they're doing, and it's so fast paced, and I just loved it. So I wrote to my mother and said, please send my guitar and my Beatles records, and I'll be here for a while. So that was the beginning of America, and I never regretted it for a moment. It was just wonderful. And I didn't go to law school right away in New York. I worked in the arts a lot. I love the arts. And when I got to be like mid to late 30s, I realized that I didn't have much in the bank, and I had to get serious about life. So that was when I went to law school. I'd worked in a few law firms, sort of on the midnight shift doing word processing, and it was always very interesting. So I went to law school. And at that moment, the job market, it was 1990, and the job market collapsed. And I couldn't find a job. So, but there were lots of jobs. If you could speak Japanese, then you could get a very good job. So I thought, well, it sounds stupid. I took the bar, passed the bar, but I couldn't get a job. Nobody could. Everybody who was starting then, they were getting letters from their new employers saying, here's 3 months' salary, sorry, but, nothing for you. So I decided to go to Japan and learn Japanese. So that's exactly what I did. So
you were a newly minted New York law school graduate?
Yes.
And a member of the New York bar?
That's right.
Who, like thousands of others, couldn't get a job?
That's right.
So you took off and went to Japan. That is very bold.
It was inevitable. And even though, looking back, it seems like crazy. Why wasn't I a little bit more patient? But I was as patient as I could be, and everybody was stuck in the same situation. It was bad. And they were all saying, go and do another degree and come back in 2 years because the situation will have changed. So in a way, I did my other degree by going to Tokyo.
To Tokyo, but without a job lined up.
But without a job lined up. But once I got there, I'd had my professor in law school actually was very connected to the Japanese community. I'd studied international law, had connections over there. So actually I was able to find quite good jobs over there, clerking for Japanese firms that did a lot of work in the States. And so it was very convenient for them to have an English speaker who could write motions for them so that they could do more of their work with the States. So it was fabulous, and it gave me the connections I needed. Although I didn't go back to New York, after that it made more sense to come to California because this is where the Japanese business really was. So then I could walk into and get an excellent job when I got here.
How did you learn Japanese, and how long did that take?
It wasn't as hard as you think. Because the thing is, they can all speak it. Surely, if I really listen, I can too. And I would listen. I didn't go to Japanese. I went to school for a couple of lessons, and I didn't like it. It was too forced. So I would listen to the television, and I would just throw myself into the community and have to start talking that way. So after about A year, I could manage anywhere. I could speak well. Yeah, it's not as hard as you think. But I enjoyed reading it more than anything. I loved that. That was fabulous.
But you had to learn to read it in a formal way, did you?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
No. Actually, I used the newspapers because we pretty much know sort of what they're saying. And so you learn the characters that way. Oh, it was great. I loved it. But then, after 2 years, it was time to come back to the States. So I came back to California.
So, California, here you are.
Here I am, and you know, there is something there that was so wonderful. Even though I loved Japan and all the Japanese people I met there, and it was a fascinating system, I'll never forget when I landed at LA Airport and the immigration officer was smiling and he said, "Welcome back to the United States." And he looked so welcoming and everybody looked that way. And you don't realize it sometimes when you live abroad, and particularly in a place like Japan, which is very, very rules conscious. And you don't realize that it creates a distance sometimes between people. And this was like the America that I had loved so much from my whole adult life. So I was thrilled to be here.
And at that time, were you already an American citizen?
Yes, that's right.
So that was the welcome back.
That was the welcome back.
Yes. Yes. So you came to California. What happened then?
So I came to California, and then I got a wonderful job in a large law firm, which was the particular project. The reason they needed someone who could read and write Japanese, read, write, and speak Japanese, was because there were Japanese parties on both sides of this particular litigation, which had to do with building scrap steel and a new machine on some place in Van Nuys, actually. And it was very interesting because within 6 months of having left Japan, I was back there for 6 weeks of depositions, this time first class, staying at the top hotels, you know, fronted by all that corporate funding. It was fabulous. So I really felt as though that was really a great, great answer. And I had a wonderful time working on that particular case. And when that case was over, that was the only Japanese case they had. And then I was very lucky because a slot opened up at Gibson Dunn, so I was able to go over there and spend some time getting to know what it was like to work in a very large firm.
So tell me, at this time, were you a California attorney?
Oh, yes.
So
I took the bar as soon as I got back.
You took the bar?
Right.
Passed
I passed the bar. It's much easier the second time. It's amazing. Your confidence level is completely different.
So it
was a great experience.
So you talked about a large law firm in LA.
Exactly.
And they took you on.
That's right.
Yeah.
And then I was lucky enough to be recruited away by a senior partner who had left Gibson Dunn and started a boutique firm with some of the people who he had worked with there. And so when I met him, he was actually, incidentally, had a Japanese case. They were representing Suzuki in the famous samurai rollovers. And that sounded much more interesting, actually, working much more hands-on than you are in the very large firm. And so I went and joined the boutique firm, and that was a fabulous experience. That was Howth & Smith. That was back in the mid-90s. And that was just litigation at its best. Traveled all over the country doing depots and mediations and this, that, and the other in high-profile cases. Very, very interesting. So I loved that. And then I found myself moving up to Santa Barbara, where I had a lot of friends, and I just loved the town, and I was offered a job up there. So I thought, well, you know, let's get out of town for a while and see what that's like. And that was good, but the main thing I learned is that I'm a big city person. So I didn't last all that long there. And so I found myself back here, and that was where the real beginning of where I am right now started, because I went back and took the first job that I could, and it happened to be in the insurance industry as defense counsel for an auto insurance company. And so, fine, that's great, and it was about 30 lawyers working there, and that was a nice sized community to be involved in. And I had a great time for 3 years because I did a lot of trials there. Oh, my first trial, they just throw you in. I'd never done a trial before. And it's like, okay, Julia, you're going to trial on Monday. Oh, really? I've never done it. Well, it doesn't matter. You'll learn when you get there. But it was a nice community, and I liked the people a lot. But I didn't really like what I was doing because So often there would be a really injured person who was claiming against the insurance company, and the insurance company didn't want to pay, naturally. But I would feel, you know, very bad for the injured person, and they would be like really make a great person at trial and things like that. So that was kind of difficult, but I did learn the industry and I enjoyed it, and I enjoyed the drama of it all. And so along the way, after about 3 or 4 years of that, I just found that I just didn't want to do it anymore. And okay, what's next? You know, I've changed jobs a lot. I didn't know what was coming down the pike. Had no idea. Last thing that occurred to me was to go off and take my own cases, because I'd always worked for other people. That's what one did, the way I thought. And so somehow there I was, completely stuck, not knowing what to do, thinking, well, maybe I should leave the law altogether. And all of a sudden, I got a call from somebody I was up against when I worked for the insurance company, who'd been the other side. And she said, I heard that you left that company, and I need somebody who can do all the litigation for me, and I would just send all these files your way, and you would just open your own office, and then you'd have all this work. And I said, well, you know, I'm not sure I know how to do that. Oh, don't worry, you'll be fine, you know, you'll be all right. So she sent me 30 cases. I just turned my living room into a law office and just started up. And from the get-go, I knew this was the best thing I ever did in my life. It was so different from any other law I'd ever practiced, because I was dealing with the person who was bringing the claim or bringing the lawsuit or whatever, and someone who had a legitimate reason to do so, someone who was injured or who had been harmed or something like that. But the stories were always so fascinating. But the fact that I could help this person and really fight for them was just unlike anything I'd ever done, and I felt so proud of myself. In the meantime, this was only less than 2 years ago. In the meantime, questioning, what took me so long? I mean, why didn't I have the courage to do this? And I realized that was exactly it. Courage is the word, because 95% of lawyers work for other people on a paycheck, and I was just the same as them. But those of us who do work on our own, we all say the same thing. Best thing I ever did. Why didn't I do it before? You know, those people, the luckiest people in the world, are those who were born entrepreneurs. And it never even occurs to them to work for anybody else. They just know how to do it the moment they step out of school. So that's what happened. Within 6 months, I was making twice as much money as I had made, and I'd worked some well-paying jobs. I was made twice as much as I'd ever made anywhere else. Huge cases were coming my way, just walking in the door. It was astounding. Mostly the people who I had met when I was on the defense side, and I always got along well with the plaintiff lawyers there. And so that really, really helped. And so a lot of them were very busy. They wanted to give me some of their cases, or they wanted me to help them if they had a big case they need help on. So it just expanded. And then I hired staff, which, because I was getting overwhelmed and unable to do it all, and that was a great experience, and then moved out of the home into an office about 4 or 5 months ago, which is a glorious experience. So still, every day is another step, but I just love what I'm doing.
Well, tell us about some of your cases.
Ah.
Aha. Well, I think that was a sort of that could go on for about 3 hours. But,
that's true.
But all right, tell us about a couple of your cases.
Okay. Well, the thing that's so exciting, as I said, is the drama of these cases. It really is fabulous. I just settled relatively recently a huge case. It was a brain injury case, and it was fascinating. It was carbon monoxide poisoning. A young woman, very, very intelligent, an IQ of 140, living in Glendale, just moved into an apartment there. And she had one of these wall heaters, the narrow, tall ones that are against the wall that you don't see them really anymore unless you live in an old house from that era, around the 50s, 60s, when we saw them all the time. Anyway, just before she moved in, it was like a series of complexes, and so they had about 700 apartments with this particular manager. So the maintenance people, when somebody was moving in, they were trying to upgrade the heaters. So they would put a new valve each time just before someone was moving in. So she moved in, and it got a little cold. It was November, it got cold. She turned the heating on, and that following day, her dog had been thrown up everywhere. He was so sick, she didn't know what had happened. She felt a little queasy herself, didn't know what was wrong, took the dog off to the vet, nobody could find out what was wrong with him. And then, for the next 2 or 3 weeks, every single day, she'd get up and she'd feel terrible vertigo. The migraines kept coming, awful headaches all the time, and then she began forgetting things so much. She couldn't concentrate, couldn't focus. It was a terrible, and she didn't know what on earth had happened. Friends came over. One friend came and said, maybe it's your gas heater. I can smell something slightly funny. It doesn't smell like gas, but it smells strange. So they called the gas company. The gas guy came over and said, oh my God, I've never seen anything like this. You are so lucky you're not dead. Why? He said that the outlets are not capped. There's a new valve on here, and whoever put it in didn't cap the outlets. Oh my goodness. Now, that was 3 or 4 years ago. She tried to hold it together for the next, she was in school full-time, she had 2 full-time jobs. She had to drop out of school like right away. She couldn't manage that. She managed at her job for a little while, and then 3 or 4 months later, she had to drop out of that. She sort of slunk home to her family in Nebraska because she just couldn't focus or do anything. And she kind of stayed, just working part-time as a hostess and wondering what the hell has happened. Now, in the meantime, she had got a lawyer when she was, down here, which wasn't me, it was somebody else. And then he passed this case on to me when it was about 2 years down the road. So there she was, living up in Nebraska, and I would speak to her and realize, yes, there is something definitely wrong with this woman, and we don't know. So I brought her down here. We saw a battery of people, neurologists and people like that, and neuropsychiatrists, and did the testing, and sure enough, there was a serious brain injury problem. So just to cut it right to the chase, I mean, it went all the way up. She saw about 7 or 8 different experts, and in the end, an MRI showed she had just incurable alteration to the brain.
What's an MRI?
It's like it's an X-ray with high intensity and high definition, and you can't X-ray the brain and see anything meaningful, but with an MRI you can see damage to the cells of the brain, and it's a very high level, extraordinary step that we have now in the medical field, whereby we can actually see physically, what has happened. The other side fought it tooth and nail. It was a fascinating fight. They just refused to accept any responsibility. They would just say, oh, she's just depressed. There's nothing wrong with her. Her brain isn't hurt. She's, It was very, very difficult case to fight. But in the end, we got a wonderful, wonderful 7-figure settlement. And it's just, I feel so sorry for her because this is incurable. Once the brain goes, there's really nothing you can do. But it felt so wonderful to have been able to help someone like that and help them get to a point where now at least she has some kind of security in her life. So, sorry, I go on and on about these cases.
You know what? I found it very fascinating, and I'm quite sure anyone who's watching this finds it fascinating. So, you're clearly in the place that life always intended that you should be.
Finally, I got
in love with your cases, passionate about your clients, fighting for your clients.
Yeah, I love it.
So now, how does one go about finding a lawyer? Let's say, how does one go about finding a lawyer like you? How does someone out there, a layperson, who doesn't happen to know an attorney,
right,
who gets injured, find a lawyer?
Well, I think what most people seem to do is they ask around. They talk to members of their family, they'll talk to their neighbors, they talk to other people, ask if they know any lawyers. And usually somebody knows somebody. Other thing they do, of course, is go to the Yellow Pages, which can be dangerous in a way, but it's not, because for the most part, I mean, no lawyer is going to take on a case in an area that he or she does not know. Because who would want to do that? You have to spend so much time working on it that if you don't know that area of the law. So, you can be fairly confident, but I think I've always thought the main thing is when you go and see a lawyer, the first thing is, do I trust this person? Do I like this person? Do I feel this person is listening to me, understanding where I'm coming from, will do a good job for me?
Sounds very much like that you, as we say, go with your gut.
It really is. It really is, yeah.
Yeah, is the person Are you connecting with that person?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So let's say you go to see an attorney and you get heard and you get declined.
Right.
Does that ever happen?
Oh yes, a lot. Well, for two reasons. There are, unfortunately, as we know, people out there who know that or believe that the law business is a deep pocket, and there's lots of money to be made, and all you need is to be able to say you've got a certain kind of case, and then you'll be rich. So the lawyer has to figure out in that initial interview whether or not there really is a strong case here, and whether or not the person seeing you is going to make a good witness on his own behalf. Sometimes it's tragic. It's a good case, but there's no evidence. So certainly I have declined cases. I hate declining cases because usually people, by the time they come and see me, they've really got something that they want to do. So, but it's inevitable and you have to. Sometimes I'll decline a case and then they'll go and look for another attorney, and the attorney will call me and ask why I did so, and I'll tell them quite up front. And I will also wish them all the very best. You know, if you can get what I didn't think I could get, please, more power to you, anything I could do to help.
So, in other words, there's room for differences of opinion.
Oh, absolutely.
So but if someone goes, let's say someone goes to one attorney, no, one attorney, no, a third attorney, no, I suppose it's a question of how persistent you care to be.
Yeah, very definitely.
So why, well, I was going to say, why would an attorney ever refuse any case if the attorney is getting paid? But that would bring me to, on what basis do attorneys get paid in your line of work?
Well, that's a very good point of view, and that's why we do have to be very careful what cases we take, because as a plaintiff lawyer, and I hope everybody here knows what the word plaintiff means, but it means the person who is complaining, as in plain, and that's the person who's bringing the claim. So as a plaintiff lawyer, as they call us, we are not paid by the hour, we're not paid up front, we're not paid a retainer, none of those things. We get no money until the whole case is over. And then we take a percentage. We take like about a third or 40% of whatever the recovery to the client has been.
So you have to win to get paid?
We have to win to get paid, yes.
And do you find that a satisfactory method of existing? It's
fabulous because, you know, for me, as I'm working on the case, it's not about the money. It's really, it's the most extraordinary thing. The case itself and getting a result is what's important. I want to get the money for the client. I want to get the client as much as possible, but I'm never thinking of it for myself. Oh, I'll make so-and-so on that. I'll make such and such there, or anything like that. For example, I have to do a mediation. I know we haven't mentioned that yet, but it'll bring the case to an end. In one particular case where a little 18-month-old boy was bitten by a large Rottweiler. He and his mother and stepfather lived in the back house.
This has to be a short story because we've only got a few minutes left.
Oh my goodness, okay. So he was shaken like a rag doll by the dog, and it was really horrible, and he developed a brain injury as a result, and we couldn't get coverage from the insurance company because of the fact they were living on the premises. But the justice is that maybe if we could get a lien on the house of the people who owned the house who were not watching the dog and the dog was dangerous, then at least, you know, when they sell the house, he's got something to go to college with. The attorneys won't get anything. I mean, there's nothing for me to get. So, but the just thing is to something for the little boy. So that's just like an example.
Wonderful. Now, I think if I was your client, I would really like being your client. However,
yes,
I think one could say generally, attorneys have a pretty bad rap in the general public. So feel free to address that in the couple of minutes we have left.
Yes, they do, and it's the saddest thing because it's entirely unjustified. I mean, attorneys are fighting for the underdog, fighting for the victim. They're rolling the dice. We're the ones that put in our money to pay up front for any costs there are, and sometimes that can be $100,000 before we see a single dime. So the impression that people have of attorneys, just because some people get, you know, a large result and then you figure the attorney's getting paid. The real story is that we're just like any other professional person, that yes, we make a good living if we're good at what we do, but we don't make an exorbitant living, but we fight hard on the part of the person. So we'll do anything we can to change that perception.
So you think that a poor perception is perhaps caused by what's called runaway verdicts?
Possibly. People don't understand why the McDonald's verdict was so high and the fireman's fund verdict was so high. People don't understand, and they think it's a windfall for the person. But it's not really. It's usually when the company has done this over and over and over and over and over, and it more speaks to how can we stop the company behaving in a way that is hurting people. And yes, it's winning the lottery for one individual. Fine, that's great. They were the one.
Well, would you say there are runaway verdicts in the other direction, where someone who should have recovered ends up getting nothing?
Oh, it's tragic. Yes, very definitely. And that's very sad. And it all boils down to, does the jury like you?
Does the jury like you?
Does the jury like you? And if the jury does, they will make you win. And if you're doing something, or if the client is doing something that they feel, no.
So it sounds as though juries go with their gut.
They do.
To a large extent. And is that something that you approve of?
I think that juries on the whole are fair. I really do. The jury system does work.
You know what? The jury system does work. On that note, I really want to thank my guest today, Julia Swanson, for coming, telling us a little bit about herself and a little bit about the legal system. And I think we're at a point to say thank you very much.
Well, thank you.
And I look forward to seeing you again.
Thank you very much indeed. It was an honor.
It was a pleasure.